This video is made possible by Second Call Defense. Second Call Defense provides immediate, upfront legal protection for a member who is forced to use any legal weapon for self-defense. So protect yourself today with Second Call Defense. I did. You'll find the link in the description.
Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. It's time for the GunGuyTV podcast.
Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV, for listening to this podcast, for watching the videos, hopefully for joining GunGuyTV crew, and all the other cool stuff you do to help me continue with this effort on GunGuyTV. I'm extremely grateful. So keep it up. Don't stop. If you do, I'm going to be all by myself, and you wouldn't want to have a lonely old gun guy in your hands, would you? Listen, today I've got a podcast for you that is outstanding. I had an opportunity while Dan O'Kelly was in the San Diego area to sit down with him and talk about what ATF is doing. Now, you may remember that Dan O'Kelly is a retired special agent from the ATF, I guess you would call it. And since he's retired, he's been fighting with ATF to help protect and in some cases restore our Second Amendment rights. Dan is a great guy, and he's a good friend. I'm very grateful he came to town. He was teaching at the El Cajon Police Department. I cannot more highly recommend his class than I do. So if you get a chance to take it, go to gunlearn.com, and you'll be able to find out more. Now, this interview was actually done live. It wasn't done online. We did it in front of a CRPA chapter, the California Rifle and Pistol Association chapter in the North County of San Diego. They were kind enough to sponsor it and provide the location. So you're going to hear some people talking in the background, and the audio might be a little noisy. That's because we were in front of a bunch of people. It was really a cool event, and I'm very grateful that we got a chance to do that. Now, this podcast, as I've mentioned before, is about 1 hour long. The first hour, or first half an hour rather, is publicly available on your favorite podcast player, and that's going to be a lot of the interview. And then the second half an hour is going to be the discussion that we had with the people there at CRPA and the various questions that they asked and Dan answered. Now, that second half is available only to members of GunGuyTV crew. So if you're not a member of GunGuyTV crew, I seriously suggest that you join. There is tons of content there. I generally post something pretty much each and every day, Monday through Friday. Once in a while I miss, but not very often. And the extended full podcasts are always available there for you. You can join GunGuyTV crew by going to GunGuyTVcrew.com. All right, let's get started with Dan. Dan, we've talked about a lot today, and so the first thing I'm going to ask you is just to update us on what's going on with the 80%ers and the whole AR lower thing. That seems to be getting more interesting as the days go by.
Well, that new proposed rulemaking that we talked about last time is past the public comment period, and it's now in the hands of whoever deals with it. You know, now they're looking at the financial aspects and all the other required steps they have to go through before it comes law. I can't even tell you how long that'll take. The most interesting part about it, as I see it, is the ripple effect. If it takes effect, if it becomes law, it is going to have the force and effect of law at that point, and those ripple effects are staggering. We were talking earlier today about how, what if this thing takes effect for the first time ever, FFLs, or federal firearms licensees, gun dealers, there's some, and I don't know if it'll be all of them, because ATF hasn't put all the parameters in the NPRM, this thing that everybody was able to comment on. It didn't have all the details in it. But FFLs, at least some of them, are going to have the ability to mark firearms like a manufacturer does. One of the provisions in this NPRM is that, you know, people are still going to be able to possess the ghost gun on the level, federal level, the ghost gun kits that they have, the 80% lowers that they have, they're going to be able to complete them. None of that's going to change. What's going to change in one respect is if and when one of these comes through the hands of an FFL, a dealer, that dealer now has to mark it with a serial number. And here's the weird part, it's not just going to be the lower or the upper, like on an FAL, it's the upper instead of the lower, at least it always has been according to ATF. It's going to be anything that's a receiver. And this NPRM now says that any lower is going to be a receiver. Any upper is also going to be a receiver. As a matter of fact, many bolt carriers are going to be considered receivers. Depending on the model of the gun, anything's going to be considered a receiver which contains a bolt, a breech block, frame rails, a firing pin, and is also, if it's a part that's visible from the outside of the gun. So an AR-15, for instance, the upper, the lower, and the bolt carrier are going to be firearm frames. They're all going to have serial numbers. They're all going to have the manufacturer's name and serial number. Is that going to be retroactive? It doesn't say in the NPRM. It's going to get weird.
Is this going to apply to handguns as well? Because what you're describing to me sounds like it also includes the slide of a semi-automatic handgun and some other parts.
It does. It's going to include the slides of all semi-automatic pistols. It's going to include things like the bolt on a Browning Auto 5. It contains the firing pin and it's visible from the outside of the gun. That's going to become a firearm frame.
Are these things all going to, are they all going to have the same, you're going to have a gun with like the same serial number and all these things, or are we talking about different serial numbers on
They're
each
all
thing?
going to have a different serial number because existing federal law says that a manufacturer, and this will then, of course, transfer to this situation incumbent on these dealers who can mark receivers, you cannot repeat a serial number because what's the point if you put the same serial number on more than one receiver? So on an AR-15, the lower may be serial number A123. Let's say that's the serial number that this dealer or this manufacturer chooses. Then he has to put 124 on the upper and then 125, A125 on the bolt carrier. So you buy that gun and then you switch bolt carriers with your buddy, you switch uppers with somebody else at a gun show or sell it, buy a new one. Now, when you filled out that 4473, it said you bought one rifle, but they're going to have to list it as 3 firearms because
the upper is a firearm, the bolt carrier group is a firearm.
3 different serial numbers. And now, when law enforcement or let's say an ATF inspector comes in to audit a store, now that same gun since then has had the parts switched and been traded in or sold back to a dealer. Well, now it's A123 on the lower, but XYZ5 on the upper and LMNOP6 on the bolt carrier. So which is belonging to what? It's going to be nuts.
How does this apply to states like California where you can only buy one gun a month? So if I can only buy one gun a month, and if I buy an AR, can I only buy one receiver a month or can I buy the whole gun?
Well, that's going to depend on the wording in California state law. If it says you can only buy one firearm a month, then you're going to have to go to the state statute, the state definition, California state definition. What is the definition of a firearm? If it says anything that fires a cartridge by the means of an explosive or anything that expels a projectile by the means of an explosive, you're still going to be able to buy that AR-15. If California's definition of a firearm says or gets changed to any firearm frame or any weapon which expels a projectile by the action of an explosive, now you're only going to be able to buy the lower this month, the upper next month, and the bolt carrier the month after.
Okay, so let's say that I can buy the whole rifle, I buy the whole rifle, and this goes through. And I buy my rifle, I buy my AR-15, for example, and I buy it in 1 caliber, 5.56. And I say I want to change it and I want to get one in 300 blackout. And so I just want to buy an upper. Am I then going through an entirely different background check because the upper is also considered, it's like I'm buying a gun again?
Yes, if you buy another barreled upper, even if you buy an upper without a barrel, the barrel won't count. But you'll be buying another firearm federally.
So if I just want to buy a stripped upper,
you're buying a firearm federally after this takes effect.
And a bolt carrier group the same way?
Yes. As a matter of fact, no manufacturer will be able to send a bolt carrier to you in the mail anymore. It'll have to go straight to the FFL and you pick it up there, just like you today when you buy a receiver, because it will be a receiver.
How's this going to apply to the guns that before the law change don't have serial numbers?
Well, again, anybody who has an 80% lower or a build kit, they can still possess it. The NPRM does not address that. You can still build it, you can still possess it. However, there won't be any more 80% receivers made unless the company who makes them wants to become a licensed manufacturer. Because a company who makes 80% receivers today, once that law takes effect, any 80% receiver they make, or even a 10% receiver they make, is still considered a firearm, and it's going to have a serial number, the manufacturer's name, city, state, all the markings that a firearm has to have today. So the point is going to be for them, well, why bother?
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, it runs them out of that business. They're going to have to do something else for a living.
Or they might as well just finish it, because why make it only 80%? Why make it 10%? They already have to market. The person who buys it has to go through all the background and the paperwork. Just make it a 100%. They're going to just become gun companies or go out of business.
I'll get right back to the interview with Dan in just a moment, but I want to give you some advice on your self-defense preparedness. I use Second Call Defense because they'll provide me with immediate upfront legal protection if I'm ever forced to defend myself with a weapon. Now, not just a gun, but any legal weapon. Here's how it works. If you have to defend yourself, Second Call Defense has an attorney available 24/7, 365 to talk to the police. Now, if you get arrested, Second Call Defense will provide the money to bail you out of jail, and they'll provide the money for your attorney and ongoing legal fees. If you get sued, Second Call Defense will provide for your defense in court from day one, $1. When I leave the house every day, I make sure that I have 3 things on me: a gun, a knife, and my Second Call Defense member card. I suggest you join. So join Second Call Defense today. You can use the link in the description.
This podcast needs your help. Send your entire wallet to The Gun Guy, 1313 Mockingbird Lane, Transylvania.
So I'm an FFL. I'm not, but let's say I am. I'm an FFL, and somebody brings me a gun that was made in 1955 or 1963. Maybe it's a shotgun or whatever gun it is, and they bring it to me. Either it doesn't have a serial number because it didn't require one at the time, or it doesn't have serial numbers on all the parts. What do I have to do with it now if this all goes through?
Private individuals won't have to do anything. Let's say you have a pre-1968 .22 rifle or a pre-1968 shotgun. Those didn't have to have serial numbers prior to the Gun Control Act of '68. And you see them out there all over the place. The old Mossbergs or the old Sears and Roebucks, who were actually made by anybody from Marlin to whomever. Again, .22 rifles and shotguns didn't have serial numbers prior to '68. Didn't have to, some did. If the company wanted to. But the point is, you have one of those. You don't have to do anything to it, as long as you keep it. But if you ever take it into a gun store to trade it in, if that gun store takes it in before they can resell it, they have to put a serial number, company name, their company name, city and state and everything on the receiver, or every receiver it has, depending on what kind of a design it is. It might have more than one receiver. Before they can resell it.
So first of all, it's an enormous nuisance in my opinion, but you didn't ask my opinion, but it is my show, so that's my opinion. It's an enormous nuisance. But the other thing I'm thinking about is these very valuable collectors' firearms that don't have serial numbers on them, and now the collector wants to sell them, and in some states like California, that has to go through a licensed dealer. Somebody now is going to start carving serial numbers into this very valuable firearm, which I would think, logic tells me diminishes significantly the value of it.
Certainly.
Am I missing something?
No, you're not. And you didn't ask my opinion about that, so I didn't say it. But I think
what's your opinion about that?
I think it's an enormous nuisance too. And I'm a gun collector, and I certainly can't imagine, having to, as you said, carve a serial number and some, Smith's Firearms or something, Tucson, Arizona, or whatever city and state this company is in, into what is now considered a receiver on some old CNR, some curio and relic, some collector's item that's worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Until 5 minutes ago, when the guy started carving in it, put the
Right.
serial numbers in it.
Right.
Wow.
These are the ripple effects that I'm not so sure anybody in ATF has sat and thought through, or if they have, they don't care. But these are going to be the ripple effects when if it takes.
Okay, you're not an attorney, and I know that, so I want to say that out loud. Dan is not an attorney, but I'm going to ask your educated opinion. Does this survive constitutional muster? Does it survive court challenges?
There are going to be a lot of court challenges. There are even more ripple effects that are going to become apparent once all these nuances are actually put in black and white. You know, a lot of the nuances that are going to have to support all this haven't even been written down yet. I don't know what they're going to be, but I guarantee you there are going to be a lot of them, and some of them are going to be contradictory to each other, and they're not going to be workable. So it's going to get utterly ridiculous.
Your knowledge of federal law is astounding. When you look at the NPRN, did I do it right? NPR?
Yeah, new proposed rulemaking.
Thank you. When you look at the new rules, with your knowledge of federal law, do they line up with what the federal law says, or are they off the reservation?
Well, the procedure of writing an NPRM and then the procedures it has to go through to become a law, that's been a thing for a long time. What they're saying in this one is, okay, what we considered a receiver on many models of guns didn't actually satisfy the definition of a receiver for the last 48 years until this retired ATF agent started pointing that out by telling the truth in federal court.
I wonder who that could have been.
And then he's the bad guy because he told that truth. There are some truths they don't want out there, but if you just read the law, well, this is what it says. I'm sorry.
How are they able to do this? I was taught that laws were passed by Congress and signed into law by the president, not that regulatory agencies could make up things that had the force and effect of law. But obviously what I was taught was incorrect. So I'm struggling with how they actually can have the authority to do that.
Well, what they're doing is writing a new definition, and they have the authority to write definitions. They've written all the definitions in the Gun Control Act and in the NFA.
There's a bunch of other stuff ATF is doing. You got the whole AR pistol thing. You got the bump stock thing that's currently in court. What's going on with those?
Well, the brace issue, the pistol with braces, there's that other NPRM that's already passed the public comment period and is now going through whatever those next steps are. And I think everybody's familiar with the fact that that includes a form that you use to factor the brace on any big pistol. I see big problems with that. Again, it's going to have the force and effect of law once it passes, if it passes as is. And that form in that NPRM says, your braced pistol, if it has these features, it gets 1 point. And that means not likely to be used as a shoulder stock. So it's okay. If it gets 2 points, that means could be used as a shoulder stock. We'll come back to that.
Okay.
3 points, likely to be used as a shoulder stock, and 4 points, it is a shoulder stock, and that's a short-barreled rifle. And I look at that and I go, well, wait a minute, 2 points could be. Well, every baseball bat could be a deadly weapon.
And in some
every
cases they have
screwdriver,
been.
right?
Yeah, right, sure.
I look at it also as every rifle could be used as a paddle to row a canoe with. If I stuck it in the water and used it to row my canoe, does that mean what? I don't get it. When are we going to start charging people with crimes for what they could have done with something? That's in a dangerous, slippery slope situation, and I have a big problem with that. When and if someone does break a law, well, there's criminal procedure, prosecutorial procedures that are in effect, and that's what we've done for hundreds of years. You gather your evidence, you prosecute somebody, and you let a judge or a jury decide. But this whole, that could be used as XYZ, that has the underpinnings of what I used to be taught about happens in communist countries. I don't like seeing that a bit.
Before I get back to the interview again, let me remind you that there is a great way to support GunGuy TV without costing yourself 1 red cent. All you have to do is use our link when you shop Amazon. Now, yes, I know that Amazon is not a gun-friendly company, but even so, people shop Amazon anyway. Well, if you're going to shop Amazon anyway, and I know sometimes I do too, then at least pick Amazon's pocket and support GunGuy TV by using our Amazon link. That way, every time you buy something on Amazon, we get a marketing fee. It costs you absolutely nothing. All you have to do is go to our website at GunGuy.tv and click on the Amazon banner and then shop. Now, if you really want to be slick about it, once you've clicked on that banner and it takes you to the Amazon page through our link, you can bookmark that page, and every time you go to Amazon, if you go to that bookmark first and shop, then GunGuy TV makes a little marketing money, and it doesn't cost you a dime. It's easy. So check out our Amazon link and support GunGuy TV with every purchase.
Saving the Second Amendment, one episode at a time. This is the GunGuy TV podcast.
With these kinds of things with the current administration in Washington, and these kinds of roads that ATF is going down, do you see more of this coming?
Yes. More anti-gun measures in general. Yes. Every time you turn around, you see where some anti-gun politician has proposed another bill that limits or taxes or bans something to do with another type of firearm. So yeah, it's been going on. I've been a gun enthusiast since the 70s, and I remember, the drive against Saturday night specials, all small handguns. I'm not even going to name some of them and give somebody newfound ideas that they forgot about, but it's been a constant, ongoing thing for several decades. I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
I want to loop back to the pistol thing. And the reason I want to loop back to it is something we were talking about, I think, at lunch today, is the idea that over the years now, ATF has convoluted this by writing a letter saying, yeah, this part is okay. And then, nope, we changed our mind, that part's not okay. Well, this part is okay. But no, kind of. Well, this part is okay, but only if you make it that way. Those kind of things. And when in actuality, you and I both know, I only know it because you taught me, that what we would call an AR pistol has already been an NFA item for a very long time.
I wasn't going to go there, but
I know, but I'm going to be honest with it. Just be honest with you. We already know that. And at any given time, they could have called it what it was, but they didn't, which leads me to ask the question, why? Do agents at ATF actually know what they're talking about? And if they don't, why not?
In a short answer, for the most part, no. I'm going to say this. The vast majority of ATF agents, let me put it this way. There are two kinds of ATF agents from my observation when I was on the job. The vast majority of them are the kind that want to catch the bad guys, and they have their heart in the right place. And while they're at it, if they get a promotion or they get some press, well, that's okay too. Then you have the ATF agents who are there to get the promotions and the press. And while they're at it, if they catch a bad guy, well, that's all right too. That wasn't really what they were after. You have the climbers and the workers. But as far as the good ones, the ones that I appreciate, the people who are just law enforcement officers that are doing their job, how much do they know about guns? Very little, and not because it's their fault. I was on staff at ATF's Academy, 1998. Well, I was there for 5 years. And when I came through ATF Basic Academy in 1988, which I hate to give you that date, but yeah, it was.
That's right. We're of similar age, so I get it. Yeah.
Back in that date, when you came through the ATF Academy, you got 1 8-hour day of firearm recognition and classification technology training. You got 8 hours. That was it. By 1998, they said, hey, we're going to rewrite, we're going to make it fully competent, comprehensive. And I was part of the group that rewrote that, and we wrote a 6.5-day gun block. And they laughed at it. Headquarters said, "What, are you kidding? We'll give you 3.5 days." I personally told the headquarters guy, "Well, then you're going to have to pick out what you don't think they need." After I got a lecture about there's nice to know and need to know, they picked out what they thought was nice to know and gave them the remaining 60%. And for 5 years now, 24 years, that's what agents have been taught. In my humble opinion, 60%, a little over half, what they need to know to be fully competent on firearms and ammunition. And that explains a lot of what's going on out there today. Again, no fault of their own personally, but if you're familiar with a lot of the concepts that we teach in firearm technology, you can go ask the average ATF employee and they have no idea what you're talking about. They weren't fully trained, and it's a shame.
Okay, so starting tomorrow morning, you're going to be teaching a 3-day seminar, which is actually a seminar which is part of the learning process, not the whole learning process, at the El Cajon Police Department.
Yes.
And I'm going to be there, even though it's going to drive you nuts, but I'm going to be there, and I'm going to drive
I'm
going to drive your buddy Don nuts while I'm there,
okay,
too, because I'm that guy. Okay. How does that educational process, how does what you teach compare to what an ATF agent would be taught in the academy about firearms today? If you were to compare apples to apples here,
okay,
are we even comparing apples to apples?
Yeah. I mean, when I retired, I went on from ATF and did a couple years compliance auditor, developed a training program, and was one of their compliance auditors for the Cabela's Corporation, was the biggest firearm retailer in the United States. And now they're even bigger because Bass Pro bought them, and now it's 4 times bigger. But we taught the training program I gave them, which was the whole 100% that the other guys and I wrote in 1998 for the ATF Academy, and they wanted it all.
That ATF took 40% out of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I left Cabela's, they got all the training and they didn't need me anymore, so they found an excuse to say you can go now, which was great because then I was able to start my company. And what we decided to do, my company said, we're going to make this 100% of this training available to the entire gun industry, all of law enforcement, and to the legal profession, attorneys, and to private citizens. There's nothing in it that's classified. It's not secret, so anybody who wants to learn and be fully competent can come through it, either live or online. So we're going to do that tomorrow, the next day, and the next day. And the way it works is this. If you go through those 3 days and actually learn it, once you learn it, and we're going to make sure anybody that wants to can, because you get access to videos afterwards, quizzes. We give you 360 some pages of printed material with a lot of photos. And depending on what your gun aptitude is, if you're at a crawl space, you might want to take weeks to finish learning it and pass the quizzes. If you're at a walk pace, it might take you a couple weeks or a month, whatever. If you're at a run pace, you can go out the next day and take those quizzes and prove, hey, I've learned this all, at which point we certify you as a firearm specialist. And at that point, you will know 40% more about firearms and ammunition than any ATF agent out there. ATF are the gun police in the most gun prolific country in the world. If anybody should be the gun experts,
It should be them.
the ATF should be. And ATF, they don't need to know what chamber pressure means. They don't need to know what headspace means, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They don't need that. And so when you go talk to an ATF person, no matter how good of an agent and investigator they are, they just weren't given the tools they need, that no matter what kind of gun or ammunition they encounter in the field, they automatically can tell you what it is, tell you about it, classify it, testify about it. They have missing gaps, pieces missing out of their jigsaw puzzle, and they need to go see somebody else to be, to get where they need to be. And I think that's a shame. We've had ATF agents and ATF inspectors come through our training, said, hey, I'm going to pay for this if I have to. ATF has actually paid for a couple of them to come through, and we helped get them where we think they need to be. We have a good relationship with those who want to have a good relationship with us from ATF, but a lot of people in ATF had a bad taste in their mouth because we have pulled the curtain back on some of these truths that they wanted to keep sort of hidden, that didn't want anybody to know.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that we do talk about?
There's a lot we need to talk about in the future because it's going to keep changing.
It's going to, you're going to have job security for a very, very long time. I hope you intend to work until you're 95 because
I don't know about that, Joel, but it's always a pleasure working with you.
Absolutely. Dan, thank you so very much for coming on the show again.
That wraps up the first 30 minutes of the podcast, and that's the part that's publicly available on your favorite podcast player. Now, if you're listening on your favorite podcast player, I do urge you to join GunGuyTV crew, because the next 30 minutes, which is the question-answer period that we had with the CRPA members and is very informative, is available only and exclusively to GunGuyTV crew members. So if you'd like to join, you can do that by going to GunGuyTVcrew.com. So if you're with me on GunGuyTV Crew, we're going to continue with the rest of the podcast in just a second. If you're listening on your favorite podcast player, thank you very much. Have a wonderful week, and wherever you go, whatever you do, be safe.
You've been listening to the GunGuy TV podcast.